What's up, everybody? Brian Kelly here, and welcome to my newest venture, the Prism Podcast. You're probably wondering, why is Brian creating this? What's the reasoning behind it? Well, there are actually many reasons why I wanted to create a podcast, but the main reason is this. I have things that I want to say. Everybody also should have something that is theirs to have and is theirs to grow. So, thinking about it, over and over, I think that this can be mine. So, as time goes on, I hope to keep the same mission in place for this podcast, and that's to provide somebody with an insight that they previously didn't have. The reason why I'm actually calling it the Prism Podcast is because of what a prism actually does. Light goes in, and color comes out. So I want to give folks the proper optics to see life in their true color. And this podcast won't have any strict formats, topics, or agendas. I see this being a podcast that can start and finish with simple conversations and digging deeper into whatever topics come up. So, with that being said, let's introduce our first guest. So you're also probably wondering, what fool would want to be my first guest on this podcast? Well, actually, my first guest, currently living in the heart of South Florida, is none other but one of my best friends, Chris Thames. Me and Chris go all the way back to freshman year at FIU in Miami, Florida, and Chris actually calls freshman year the dorm days. Chris is also the co-founder of Today's Loop, a rising lifestyle media company promoting culture, sports, events, and as we speak, they are moving into the interviewing and podcast realm of digital media. So, if you haven't heard of Today's Loop before, now you have. And with that being said, let's go ahead with the first show and see what we have to talk about. Mr. Thames, we are live, and you know what's funny? I don't know whether to congratulate you or to feel bad for you that you're my first guest.
Oh, I don't know either, but I'm honored to be your first guest, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, man, look, this is something that, I've always wanted to do. I wanted to have something that was my own project, something that I can kind of nurture but also give back in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And given your experiences and given our friendship, I couldn't think of a better guest. And given what you do with Today's Loop, which is Chris's company, by the way, he co-founded, we're going to go a lot deeper into that as time goes on. But what I think a good place to start at, Thames, and just to give a little bit of background, Chris and I went to Florida State together. We met at FIU, and I think what would be funny, go Noles, baby, and Panthers. Don't you forget about those Panthers, baby.
Can't forget Panther Hall, never will.
Panther Projects. It's Panther Projects. Always has been, always will be. No matter how many renovations they do, it will always be the Panther Projects.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know what? I've had some time to get over it, but I think what will be funny for people to hear is how you and I met initially. And I want you to kind of tell me that story and how, I knocked on 208. I think that's something that people would appreciate.
Very interesting story, actually. I still remember it to this day. And wow, what a cup. What a cup. But yeah.
Oh yeah, let me show the viewers. So Chris is Jamaican, by the way.
Come on, yeah. You already knew that.
And I have a Jamaican cup, which I don't know what the fuck it's doing in this office. Nobody's Jamaican here. But
and that's
I guess
hey, it's part of the culture.
It finally has a purpose here. It finally has a purpose. So go ahead and tell everybody how we initially met.
All right. Well, just like most people, it's first week of campus. You're at your dorm room and people are coming in and out. You're meeting new faces. And, one day we're just chilling. I'm with my roommates and someone knocks on the door and I go to open the door and, it's Mr. Brian Kelly from Brewster, New York. He's in his preppy outfit and I'm Chris Thames from, Fort Lauderdale. Just two different type of cultures kind of meshing together and hitting each other, and we both looked at each other a little crazy at first.
Right.
We looked at each other a little crazy because if I remember correctly, that was Brian Kelly's room I had taken. It was his over the summer. And what happened? You turned in your forms late, so.
Well, we can blame Lawrence Giles for that, wherever he may be.
Wherever he may be, but
yeah.
it was one of those moments where you just randomly open the door. He came to my dorm looking to meet my roommate because they knew each other. They had met and talked previously, and I happened to open the door and just met him. And from there, we got into some adventures, trouble, long nights, the shenanigans.
Emphasis on the trouble, I would say, and the long nights, and those two go in tandem perfectly because those long nights were caused by the trouble that we've gotten in. And it's kind of funny, Chris, and I think it's cool for friends to kind of like have a conversation about how far they've come. Right. So you and I remember you said it exactly right. I knocked on the door. You guys took my previous room. They fucking moved me to the room next door. I moved all my shit to my aunt's house in Fort Lauderdale. FIU's in Miami, by the way, for those who don't know, West Miami.
Florida International.
FIU, baby, 305 or 786. Don't want to discriminate against 786s. But I looked at this kid. I'm like, yo, who the fuck is this guy? And where's my friend? And I think that night...
Who's this guy, right?
Who's this guy? And I know you thought the same exact thing. And it's funny. I think we hung out that night in the park. We hung out that night in the park, and it was so organic. And it was so genuine. It was like, all right, this guy we're probably going to be really good friends. And as it turns out, Thames left spring semester, which I won't give him too much shit for publicly, but I've given him plenty of shit privately for because that was arguably the best semester ever, like of all 4 years.
I've heard.
But Thames and I, and Nathan as well, who's another friend of ours, transferred to Florida State. I went to TCC, you went to TCC, Nathan went to Florida State, and we're all like, fuck it, let's make the move and do something even bigger and better. That being Florida State. So, you and I lived at Seminole Grand, which we can thank Brandon Sierra for that fantastic judgment call.
Seminole Grand.
Seminole Grand. You know what's funny?
A place filled with memories.
Memories and things that I don't remember at all. But, we started out there at TCC, and it wasn't run down, but it wasn't the best place to live. As a college student in Tallahassee, you had usually a lot of these communities, especially at a big school. So some of you might be in big schools or graduated from big schools. You have these student communities, right? So, for example, we have Woodlands in Tallahassee, for example, where we lived our junior and senior year. But this place was interesting, to say the least. And anyway, we got into a lot of shenanigans there, but seeing as things have gone on, we both graduated, right? We have degrees. I kind of want to return mine after this fucking football season, though. I wonder if I can get all $100,000 back because it was 4-6 season currently. But Thames and I, and you have friends. Everybody has friends that they serve different purposes, right? I'm not saying that you should segment your friends, but Thames is somebody that I can go to not only personally, right, to have conversations, but professionally, right? We're both young guys. We're hungry guys. We want to create something our own. So, for example, this podcast, I really wanted to try to do something that was creative, something that I can give back, and ultimately just to let my voice be heard, because I have a lot of different experiences, a lot of different opinions, and I'm going to try to get by with a little help from my friends. And I think that's a good segue, Chris, into today's loop. Because I see you have the today's loop hat on. This guy is never not marketing. Oh, yeah. Never not marketing. He always knows what's up, and he's got the old school, what is that, Dwayne Wade jersey?
Oh, no, man. I'm still living in the past. This is an old LeBron.
Old LeBron. You know what? I wish it was
LeBron
2000.
James.
Look at that shit. Look at that. You want to hear something funny,
What's this
dude?
kid doing?
I know.
I'm living in the past, man.
That's all right. And you know what, dude? Like, what LeBron did for the city of Miami in those 4 years was, unparalleled. Yeah. 2 championships, bro. The Cavs probably aren't going to win this year. I don't think they are. I mean,
what would be crazy? A matchup against Boston.
That's probably the way that it's heading, right?
And oh my God, that would bring in some viewership for the NBA.
Oh, I know, but let's talk a little bit about today's loop. This is something that you've been working on since sophomore year of college, right back at Seminole Grand.
Yes, sir.
You've been plugging at this, hours upon hours a day, I would say, right? I've witnessed you bust your ass. I've witnessed you brainstorm. I've helped out, where I've could. in the past 3 years, and just to see this grow and see your commitment to it is something that's admirable. And why don't you, go ahead and tell the people a little bit about today's loop and, what it is and how you got started.
All right. Well, just to feed off of what you said, Kelly, I appreciate those words from you for real. Means a lot coming from you, considering as my boy, I got a lot of inspiration from you when I saw you as a young kid, just, always working.
This fucking guy? Are you kidding me, bro?
No.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to take the compliment. I'm going to take the compliment. They're few and far in between these days, people.
Today's loop is growing, man. We're doing well. I'm excited for the vision that I see with it. I'm excited for where I've seen us progress from when we first started back in, like you said, sophomore dorms. It was just it was actually exams at TCC. I just had a vision. It came upon me. We'll get to that, at some other point. Mm-hmm. But right now with today's loop, we've gotten to a point where it's gotten more serious. You get to a point where you're getting invited to cover events, and you're getting involved in affiliate marketing with other companies for brands. You're going to these parties, you're meeting these different celebrities, and you're really just networking and growing and meeting people. It all just starts to really, just move, and it becomes a fun process. I can tell you there's a stage, there's actually a consistent stage where you're always, just trying to learn. You're always trying to grow, find ways to fix things because problems are always coming up. Like you said, you've been seeing me at this for a long time, and I'm still here. I'm still in the startup stages. We're still trying to grow daily, but we have some big things coming in 2018 that I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see, and I'm looking forward to what we put out and growing with everybody, honestly.
Yeah. And when you make it big, be sure to spread the wealth with your friend Brian here.
You already know, man.
So let me ask you this, and this is something that I've always wanted to know and I've never asked. With Prism Podcast here, right? It's Prism, people, not prison. It's Prism. Let me just make that clear. I'm not broadcasting from jail. I'm broadcasting from New York City in a studio. But let me ask you this. When you first started this sophomore year at TCC, right? Was this more of a passion project, or was this something that had legitimate business legs?
That's a good question, Mr. Kelly. That is a great question. It was a mix of both. You see, I actually grew up like always watching sports, trying to make something, playing sports, interest in business. So when I got to college, it eventually just all came together, like I'm going to college games, I'm seeing professional games, I'm listening to hip hop, and, to me it was just like, man, like this is all stuff I love to do. We played intramural football, we played intramural soccer.
Right.
We love the athletic parts of life, we love sports. So to me, the passion was there in terms of sports and culture, all that part. I grew up a part of the culture like many of the people we know. The business aspect, as you know, that actually was involved because when I originally started the idea back in 2013, we were actually trying to create a fantasy sports website. Actually, not even fantasy sports. It was a fantasy entertainment website. And unfortunately, things didn't work out. So we pivoted into more so a lifestyle media company. And that's what we are today. And, we've been able to find bread and butter moving in that direction.
And it's so funny that you mentioned the fantasy entertainment aspect of it, because I remember, you and I and Manthe as well, I'm an advertising major, right? And when you're an advertising major, math isn't exactly your strongest subject. Thames, you were an editing, writing, and media major, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that your math isn't the strongest either. And we were sitting there.
Shout out to Mr. Ingalls.
Yeah, we were sitting there, on whatever substance we were on, let's be honest here, and trying to figure out a way to, like, create an algorithm of sorts to to make this thing happen. Like you were
Fantasy
fixated.
entertainment game.
Yeah, you were fixated on the idea, right? And we were trying to figure out a way to make it work. But sometimes in business, and you can speak a little bit to this as well. You need to pivot sometimes, right? And you need to be able to adapt. So if something doesn't work for you, whether it's like an outside source, like the markets, or it can't work internally with your skill set, you have to be able to adapt. So,
True.
Fast forward to 2017 here. What does today's loop look like in its microcosm? Meaning, what type of content are you guys putting out there? What kind of vibe do you want to give off to people? And what does the future ultimately hold? And you don't have to go into specifics if you don't want to, but where do you see today's loop going, from here on out?
Absolutely. Well, like I said, it's, we're building a lifestyle media company. So we're based right now in, excuse me.
I'll get a drink of my Jamaican coffee too for my brothers.
Yeah, Mecca McCrazy.
Bumba clot. I'm the whitest motherfucker ever. Should not have said that.
Oh, nah, you had some nights where we were,
bro,
in different states, and you heard some conversations with our old roommate Garrett.
If I could,
but,
goddamn. All right, let's not get too crazy.
Like you were saying, like I was saying, it's a lifestyle media company. So, we do a lot in the Miami area. We go out in the nightlife. We go to restaurants such as Prime 112, Komodo's, Fountain Blue, which they have the club Live, which everybody knows of. You have clubs like FDR, Studio. We go out to the ocean drives. We go out to Fort Lauderdale marinas where people are on their boats. We're really just out in the environment. When I went to LA, I was out there at Venice Beach. When we go to NYC, we're in Manhattan, going to different locations like Wall Street, even taking trips to Brewster and visiting you. And what we're really now trying to hone in on.
There's nothing in Brewster to visit, my man.
Except for that one pizza place you guys have.
I'm going there tomorrow. It's only for special occasions now because I'm trying to fucking lose weight. And that's not working very well, to be honest. But keep going.
Right now, we're switching our focus. We're going to start doing some interviews with public figures. Mm-hmm. We have some guys like Shabazz, the OG, a part of TMT's team. We're going to be interviewing guys like Tyson Beckford and other public figures. Come 2018, we have them on board to do some interviews with them. We're also trying to get into, the restaurant coverage game. We're going to be doing a lot of promotion work for restaurants, going out there and, helping startup companies young who, new restaurants just getting started. We're going to help them get promotion, help them get a crowd out, build that vibe for them, get people talking about their restaurant in the areas. And, we've been going to high school football games. We've been going to high school basketball games. We're really trying to help the youth as well. If you check us out on social media, we help promote a lot of young kids with music, with athletics. We're just trying to, and even with business, we're trying to inspire people, to change their mindsets, try and live a life of positivity, good energy. There's a lot of hate out here, and it's not needed.
There is a lot, and I'm glad that you brought that up because, and we can go into this a little bit further as we go on here. But let me ask you this instead. You mentioned, that you're a young entrepreneur and you're trying to get out there and make things happen, right? Given that you're young, right, you're in a competitive city like Miami, in an area like South Florida, especially in the lifestyle category, right? So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face being this young entrepreneur in this competitive space, and how do you go about those challenges and attack it head on? Because I know you do. I just want to hear it.
Being a young entrepreneur in Miami, I will say one thing. Anybody who makes it in South Florida, and that's in terms of rap, business, being a comedian, entrepreneur, I commend you, because South Florida is a tough city to really, get yourself to that next level, unless you're already born into it. If you're not born into it, you really have to, you gotta grind through the mud.
Right.
People aren't just giving handouts, I don't like here. You'll come across one or two, three people who will, take you on and show you the ropes, maybe even help you make some money.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it really comes down to how much work are you really willing to put in and show people, hey, I'm serious. I'm going to be doing this day in, day out. I'll make money. I don't need you to make money. Because a lot of times, you got to show people that you can do this on your own. And once you do that, and then they flock to you once they see that whole wave, that just goes back to the snowball effect that happens to a lot of people when they're working.
Right.
You're putting in work, and then eventually somebody puts you on a big platform, and then everybody sees you, and then boom, 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 you grow. It's been a journey in Miami, to say the least. I know a lot of entrepreneurs out here. Guys that we went to FIU with who are trying to make it in different businesses as well. Guys who are doing the whole fitness thing, guys who are trying to be motivational speakers.
Only one person comes to mind, by the way, when you said fitness and motivational speaker, and I hope you hear this, Martin Felix. I hope you do, because I miss you. You're gorgeous.
Hey, Martin.
You're gorgeous, but maybe once, Martin, take a Instagram post with your shirt on. I'm just kidding. Do you, man? And it's what you were just discussing about, like, creating your own success, right? Being an entrepreneur, it's sink or swim, right? You have to be able to want to push the envelope, to take risks, to be afraid to fail. You know what I mean? People are really afraid to fail nowadays, but the benefit of you and myself, now with this podcast, is that we can fail. We're young. We don't have a lot of risk, right? There's not a lot on the line, so to speak. So really now is the time. If you're a young kid, and you want to create something, right? And more than that, you want to be something, right? That's uniquely you. Right, and making money off of that, you should go ahead and do that. And as far as today's loop goes, and what you do both professionally and personally, do you feel like there's an inherent need to create with you? Meaning you have to do something that's unique, you have to do something that's your own, and ultimately putting your own voice out there, not working that 9 to 5.
Yeah, I definitely do, Brian Kelly. Naturally, that's just how I feel. Not everybody does. I would definitely recommend to most people try and come up with a couple side hustles. And like you say, that need to create. If you're not creating content, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you can still create a system or create something for yourself that generates money. That goes to drop shipping, and drop shipping is like related to wholesaling, selling stuff.
Right.
You got real estate, you have new ventures coming up like marijuana, investing in it. There's Bitcoin is going crazy nowadays. There's other digital currencies that are going on. You really just got to do your research, and you can find things and create your own lane.
I don't think it's ever been easier in the history of the world to be an entrepreneur. This day and age, I mean, I say that relatively speaking, because it's obviously hard to create a business. And let alone that, it's hard to make money with your own business. You can create a podcast, you can have a social media feed, and have great content, right? But you won't be able to monetize it. But I feel like in 2017, in today's day and age, you have all the tools at your disposal to be able to be an entrepreneur and create something. With social media, with the Facebooks and Twitters and Instagrams of the world, to YouTube, to, SoundCloud, you have so many options at your disposal. And somebody that really inspires me to kind of go on this tangent, and I first I thought he was a cheesy motherfucker, to be honest with you. I thought Gary Vaynerchuk was just like some cheeseball from fucking Queens, that like loved the Jets way too much. And I'm a huge Jets fan. I'm saying like, yo, you need to chill the fuck out. But kind of listening to his story and kind of hearing, what he's gone through. And he said something really interesting to me. Or not to me. I wish he did, because that would be fucking great advice. He was at this conference, and he said, what inspires you, right? Like, what keeps you going? What makes you want to, be all that you can be? And he said human beings have a 400 trillion to 1 odds of actually being a human. Like, the fact that you exist, Thames, and I exist, like 400 million to 1 odds. And I think that's correct. It might be 400 billion, like some crazy number. But the point is, the fact that we're blessed with the opportunity to have consciousness, right, and to be aware of our surroundings and to ultimately create our own reality, right? That's something that inspires me and something that Gary Vee really touched upon. And I'm telling you, man, I shit on him initially. I think I told you, like, yo, fuck this guy. Like, he's just like milking this whole like social entrepreneurial movement, but he actually has had a lot of success. So I want to know, you've been at this for so long, dude. Like, your commitment is absolutely admirable. And there's been times where I'm like, why is he still doing this? You know, where is it leading to? But that's not really, that doesn't matter. Like, that shit doesn't really matter, and I've realized that. So I want to know what keeps you going and who and what inspires you, you know, to keep wearing that hat on top of your head.
What keeps me going, Kevin?
And for those who are on audio, he's wearing a Today's Loop hat, which hopefully, you know, you'll be able to sell. And we can get some people to wear those, including myself, because I really want one. And I think Josh fucking Benjamin took mine, which is cool. This is a different story. I love you, Josh.
We had a whole inventory, too, and we ran out. And you were supposed to get one, but we're getting a new inventory soon. And I promise, Kelly, you will be one of the first to get one, because we have had some people in the DMs asking for hats and whatnot.
In the DMs.
But like you asked, what was the question you asked again?
What hand do you use to jerk off with? No, I'm just kidding. What? Sorry, people. Who inspires you? You know, what keeps you going, and how do you ultimately maintain that higher? Okay, well, we didn't need to know that. But, you know, I feel like it's really important for people to have inspirations, to have people that pick them up, because you can't do everything on your own. Absolutely. You really can't. And it doesn't matter if you don't have anybody in your immediate range to influence you. What really matters is that you're proactive online, you're doing your research, you're reading up on those who have had success, those who have been in your position before and have failed, right? So I really want to know who has inspired you, what has inspired you, and, you know, like I said, what keeps you wearing that hat?
All right. Well, what keeps me going, I can honestly say, is the growth. You know, not everybody's going to know the full story. You know, you don't know the same story that, you know, I would know. The person that I knew 2-3 years ago that I met, you know, that maybe knew me from high school, they don't know the full story. So for me, I've watched the brand from back when we started it, and it was called It's Yom. Some people used to call it It's Yomi.
Good
so
times.
I've watched good times, right? So I've watched it from that point on to now 2017, when back then, you know, we wouldn't get emails back. We wouldn't get people picking up their phones.
Right.
We wouldn't get deals. You know, we weren't making money from it.
Right.
We weren't getting, you know, hundreds of thousands of hits, sometimes even millions of hits. We weren't getting, you know, we weren't meeting celebrities. So eventually, over time, all that starts to happen. You know, you start meeting people that you grew up watching, listening to, and you're not meeting them as a fan. You're meeting them now because you actually have a business. You're in the location you are because you have something that you're doing, and while you're still young and you're a startup with it, you're there because somebody respected you enough to either take you along, give you a pass, or, you know, you found your way in. A lot of this has to do with finessing and finagling in this life. You got to really be out there and just, you know, knocking on people's door, meeting people, shaking hands, going to this restaurant. Who inspires me? You know, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there who are doing big things nowadays, a lot of innovators. I would say some guys who inspire me are guys like Diddy, you know, guys like Jay-Z, guys like LeBron James, guys like Mark Cuban, you know, guys like Popovich, you know, guys who can keep themselves together, you know, they get their business done, and, you know, they live a good life. They give back to the community, and they just grow.
Yeah.
Those guys are, they've really proven success over a long time, like a long time.
Yeah. Those guys have longevity, man. And the thing with those guys is that, and you mentioned a wide variety of people from Pop, right? Greg Popovich, the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, to guys like Diddy and Cuban, right? And I think it's important. If you really need to be well versed in how you learn. I feel like the ways in which you learn is almost as important of the actual act of learning. So let me explain what I mean by that. You have given, and I said this earlier, we're in this amazing digital age where we have so much content at our disposal.
Global village.
Global village, yay! Yay, buzzword. I fucking hate that shit. But it's, I do. But it's true. It might be a cliche, but it's true. And the more resources that you pull from, right? So having people like Gary Vee to LeBron James to Greg Popovich, and, it can go down the line to, like, people, like Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who are both physics guys who I personally have man crushes on. Like, the two guys you wouldn't expect me to have a man crush on. Like, Michio Kaku's like a 5'1" scientist, and he cracks me up. He's so funny, but he really knows his shit, and he's a theoretical physicist.
Anybody who knows Brian Kelly really well knows what kind of waves you're on and what you're trying to think about and do. So it doesn't surprise me that Neil's crushed.
Yeah, listen, man. Look, I feel like it's not because I want to learn, it's because I have to. In order for me to survive in this world and how competitive it is, you don't even need to know the most, but you need to be well versed in a lot of different things, right? Not necessarily sacrificing the quality of that knowledge, right? But having a good base of things that you could go back to, because the one thing that I've noticed that if you watch all these YouTube videos, if you read this article, you follow people that you wouldn't normally get influence from, it really changes your perspective, and you really start to notice it in conversations. So, like, for example, I was like, you'll appreciate this story. Last night, I got a free personal training session at New York Sports Club. Lord knows I need it. And and this kid, I think he was the same age as me. He was my trainer. We had a kick-ass workout. We did a lot of shit. And then we talked for an hour, like about an hour after it, about the nature of reality. And we were talking about, like, psychedelic shrooms and how that can change, like, your plane of reality, like, all this crazy shit. And I think it's just important for people to, like I said, pull from different avenues, like, gain these insights, because as you go on in life, right, these things are going to only help you and benefit you and bring you into different crowds of people and ultimately opening more doors for you. You know what I mean? And getting yourself in uncomfortable positions is key as well, right? And I know, you being this entrepreneur that you are, have you had to put yourself in these uncomfortable positions? And if so, what are some examples and how did you go about doing it? I know you went to ComplexCon recently, and that's something. First of all, you didn't fucking tell me that you were going, which that's all right. You got your secret business trips, but. You went out there, man.
It was a last minute thing. I wish I could have had more time out there, but it was literally just a 1-day trip, one-day pass kind of thing.
But you've put yourself in these uncomfortable positions. Like, something like that takes balls, right? Like, you're going to a conference that has some of the industry's best and brightest, right? And this might not necessarily be your exact example, but allude to, like, how important it is to putting yourself in uncomfortable positions as somebody who's growing up.
It's critical. It's actually mandatory. You see, if you don't put yourself in uncomfortable positions, you're never going to see that other side of what you could have done, because instead you're just going to be thinking, like, man, I wonder what would have been if I had gone to that casting call in Atlanta that I really wanted to go to. Man, I wonder what would have happened if I'd gone to the tryouts on Sunday, but I said, no, I don't want to go. You really got to put yourself in different positions. Me and my partner, his name's Jamar Lewis, been my boy since high school. Solid guy.
AKA Plantation God.
AKA, you know, me and him, we've been in
Shout out to
Miami,
J. Lou.
shout out to Jay. I couldn't have done this without him and the support of guys like you and, our programmers,
Mm-hmm.
social media strategists we've had. But going apart from that, we'll go to places, we started going out to places in Miami where you're talking about two guys, I'm not afraid to say it. Me and Jamar, we're just kids from, Brampton, as Drake would say. We're kids who didn't grow up in wealthy families. We grew up, if not close to low income, middle class
Mm-hmm.
families. And we started putting ourselves in different positions. Now we're at marinas and on boats with owners, people who own millions, close to billions. Now we're in restaurants with people, who are talking about being possible investors. We're talking to people who just left Diddy's house. I met guys on the airplane coming back from New York who, once we got into Miami, they're taking me around in all sorts of foreign cars. We're going to link up with guys like Hassan Whiteside. We're meeting Luol Deng. He you put yourself in a position, you can literally just meet one person that will show you a whole different side of life that you didn't think you would see. And once you see that side, something clicks
And
and you never look back.
it's, what I find, kind of unfortunate, and I'm glad that you have this mentality, right? And that could be attributed to a number of things, just like natural gifts, your upbringing, this and that. But I feel like a lot of people today just want to take that 9-to-5 job, right? Just sit at their desk, like do that work. They hate going into their job, right? They hate sitting there for 8 hours, and they go home, right? Like have that dinner, like watch your recorded shows and go to sleep. It's almost robotic. It's almost toxic, actually. And as I've gone on here, and some of you guys, who are listening know my background, involved in advertising for a number of years through internships and certain academic endeavors. But I've recently switched over to politics, public policy, because that's just where I think my strengths lie. Getting an internship on the Hill was pretty crucial, but I feel like people don't follow their passions, man. There's so much wasted talent out there, right? And people, instead of, taking the hard path, right, like you're doing and continue to do, right, putting yourself in these uncomfortable positions, people are just going to, like, sit up, like, let me just type on my computer and, like, go to this meeting, like, blah, blah, blah. It sucks, man. I worked a 9-to-5, my first job out.
I think most of us have.
Most of us have. People, it's not an unusual thing, and I'm not, like, shitting on it entirely. I just think that a lot of people, instead of following their true passions and creating something, they'll take the easy route. And being an entrepreneur isn't necessarily for everybody. Like, you need people to do 9-to-5 jobs, right? That's just like a part of our society and how things work. But, I don't know if I can see myself doing a 9-to-5 job. It's terrifying. Why I say it's terrifying, because, you're locked in at a desk, right? You have to, wake up at the same time every day, which isn't normal. I do that. I don't have a normal 9-to-5 job right now. And, they just go to work and they hate going to work.
Lucky and blessed.
Say again?
Consider yourself lucky and blessed.
Lucky and blessed. Always have been. Hopefully always will be. But, I, like this morning on the train, like, I couldn't believe what I saw. So I was on the train this morning coming in from Brewster down to the city. And I saw this guy who was sitting about 2 rows in front of me. As soon as we stopped at Grand Central, which is like the main train station in New York City of the Penn Station, he just looked up at the ceiling like, oh fuck, right? That sucks. Seeing somebody who is so disheartened by a career, right? And there's this whole movement where 2017, follow your passions. You don't need to do this. I agree with that. Now, and like I said earlier, now is the time to leave that 9-to-5, or not even the 9-to-5, but do side projects, like do passion projects, like get involved with yourself. A lot of people aren't involved with themselves. Everything is like, let me put on this face. Here's my meeting face. Here's my presentation face, right? Here's my, going out to dinner with a client face. Like, people don't have something that's theirs, right?
You're trying to impress everybody
You're
else.
worrying about everybody else. You're not taking care of yourself, right? And there's a lot of disadvantages to doing that lifestyle. You don't eat right. You sit in a chair all day. You're not getting the physical activity. You feel tired. You don't want to go to the gym. At lunch, it'll be easier just to go over to the Thai restaurant and get some pad Thai instead of making your own salad or doing meal prep. And it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And the one thing that I admire about you, Thames, is, you could have done the 9 to 5, right? You could have moved up here to New York or stay down there in Miami, work at whatever you wanted to do. But I don't think that's good enough, man. I think what you're doing with today's loop, right? You set your own hours, number one, right? You commit the time you feel like you need to commit. But more importantly, dude, it's really about being who you want to be and not really giving a fuck about anything else, right? And it's never been easier to not give a fuck. Never been easier. But also, with social media, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier there's a lot of hate out there. And this,
Yes.
and it can be attributed to, hundreds of things, right? Hundreds of things. But especially on social media, it makes it so much easier for people.
Hate's not even a bad thing today. Hate's making people famous and people money.
Isn't that a crazy thing to think about? Name somebody, because I can't think off the top of my head, who's making money off of hate.
Bunk Gang, Extension. Those guys, you look in their comments, there's a lot of people just going in ham and they're doing the quote-unquote coonery stuff and, oh, he's on drugs, he's going to die out, this, that. But you guys are engaging, you're making him more famous, and he just keeps growing.
Isn't Bunk from South Florida?
He may be.
Well, I can look this up. And let me say this real quick. Joe Rogan, if you ever listen to this first episode, you are my inspiration for this podcast. You wouldn't think, and this is what I'm kind of alluding to about drawing inspiration from numerous places. I just got into podcasts when I was working at Esquire. I'd listen to it as I was working, and this is a whole new frontier, man. Like, podcasts are becoming more and more popular. People need that ear candy. People want that deeper content. People don't want that fucking 140 character tweet. People don't want that 30-second IG video. People want depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the best place for that is podcasts, in my opinion. The easiest way to digest content, but in an in-depth way, is with podcasts. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why I wanted to do this personally, and everybody that knows me, either love me or hate me, kind of, but a lot of people might disagree with that. I like to think that a lot of people like me, but I don't want to, toot my own horn here. But I just want to put stuff out there, man. I have a lot of shit to say. I have a lot of interests. I have a lot of interesting friends who can help contribute. You know what I mean? You being one of them. And just trying to create something, dog. Just trying to be unique, be myself, right, and have fun with it. And not worry about the haters. And a lot of people, man, today, you can tell me if you experience any of this, will just quit because they get some hate, right? Oh, you suck. Oh, fuck this podcast. Have you ran into people who have just shit on you or giving you absolute shit for what you're doing?
I mean, I had one guy tell me, quit your job, bro, and get another one. He messaged me that on TL. I even had one guy about 2-3 years ago. I was in the hospital, and somebody messaged me pretending to be Mr. John Thompson. He pretended to be Mr. John Thompson, and he pretended to make me a proposal, like he was trying to buy the company. Not even buy the company, partnership with the company.
Okay.
And I found it interesting because that hadn't, nobody had really come to me with a proposal like that until I was in the hospital. And Granted, I was fine when I was in the hospital. My boy, you came through, visited
You're
me.
welcome for that Panera bread salad, by the way. It was
but
actually like the best salad I've ever had.
and I do appreciate it.
Yeah,
But
you're welcome.
what I mean by hate, how strong people will hate you, is when you know somebody's in the hospital and then you send somebody a proposal like that, and you know they're in the hospital, but yet you're sending a proposal, and that's just minute compared to all the stuff that goes on in the industry with hate. I mean, these guys will smile in your face and then go talk crap about you, try and make sure you don't get what you want. But that's besides the point. You got to focus on your lane, do your thing, and enjoy life, man.
That's
And
all.
that's what
This is all
smart
we got, dude. This is.
exactly.
We have one life to live, and as far as we know, that's the only life we get. A lot of people predicate their lives on shit that's happened to them, on shit they have to do in the future, whether that's work or like financial issues. And those things suck, right? Like those things genuinely suck, and it's hard to like compartmentalize that stuff.
Yeah.
But
Oh, and Kelly, not to interrupt you, Kelly, but I know who sent that message, and I won't say your name over here, but just know I know who sent it.
do I know the person?
You do, but
We
won't
can
say the
we
name.
we can say it off the air. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll say it.
Continue.
I mean, if you gave me like 5 guesses, I probably could. But we'll move on to something else. Actually, I probably only need 2.
Nah, there's no way you're that good, but let's continue.
But listen, man, people, I believe in this, and I don't know if it's controversial, but it's not necessarily a mainstream thing. And I've told you about my love for like space and science, technology. I have what's called a cosmic perspective. This is something that I learned from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's, if I ever met the guy, I swear to God, I'd break down to tears and like give him my business card and be like, let me like write speeches for you or something. Let me do something for you. But he presented this idea on this video that I watched, where his most outstanding fact that he knows about the universe, and I find this to be almost poetic, that us human beings, Thames, are made out of carbon, right? Hydrogen. We have oxygen, and there's one more. I forgot it, but anyway, there's 4 elements that we're made out of, like mainly, correct? And those are the 4 most abundant elements in the universe. And when stars explode, right, like supernovas, they release their cosmic guts into outer space, right? These elements they release that was, forged, and this is word for word what he says, Neil deGrasse Tyson, forged in the crucibles of these stars, right? These elements. We are ultimately products of these supernovas. And we're pretty much made out of stardust, as, cheesy as that sounds, we are. And these are things that I take into account on a daily basis. Because, I can't, it's almost like what I get from that is that you can't really rely on others. You create your own universe. You create your own reality. You've been put here by, the grace of God or whatever, however you want to spin it, on this earth. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to live your life? As far as we know, as far as science knows, there is no afterlife, right? For all we know, religion's bullshit, right? Which that's a different subject. I'm not going to get too crazy into that. But we don't know. That's the bottom line. We don't know. So given the fact that we don't know, what the fuck are you going to do with your life? What's your legacy going to be? How are you going to be remembered? These are things that I feel like entrepreneurs take into account. They don't necessarily have the cosmic perspective, but these are things that take into account legacy, creating, giving back, longevity. Do you feel these things as you go out in your day-to-day?
I mean, bro, you hit it spot on, Brian Kelly, and I think that's why we're best friends and we clicked. Because, dog, like you said, we don't know what goes beyond this universe. We don't know what really is going on with this whole religion thing. You have, as far as I know, one life. Okay? We're only going to wake up the day before Thanksgiving tomorrow for 2017 one time. So why not live a life that you want to live? Why are you gonna go live a life that you're helping another man pay for his family's vacation? You're helping another man make sure his yacht is looking sweet.
Hell yeah.
I get it. I get it. Trust me. Sometimes you gotta grind out here. You gotta go work for that guy sometimes. Get your money right, stack it up, and then flip it. You gotta do that stuff.
Right.
But if you're only working to just get your check and then maybe go hit the town one night, or you're working for bills, then you're not living for this life right now. And that's what
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur makes me grind. Like, I want to enjoy this life. I want to leave something for the people that, my offspring, my family, people that I know, my
Do you
friends.
have children that we don't know about, Chris Thames?
No, my pullout game has not been tested.
Don't worry, dog. Mine has not either.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, dude. Look, man. I'm glad that you agree as well. We don't know. We don't know what's out there. We don't know what's left, and a lot of what life, going all the way back. Like, and I don't want to touch upon this for too long, because we can get real fucking deep about this shit, which we have like 4 a.m. after drinking lots of water. Let's say at Bajas or Pots. Lots of water. We were very hydrated. We were a hydrated bunch. Dude, yeah. There's so many things that we don't know out there, and the one thing that I've tried to do, and I've had a rough 4 months, like between working in Washington, not necessarily landing the staff job that I want to. I'm still trying to get out there. So anyway, people, if you're listening, I'm available. But you got to pay me a little bit more than $30,000 a year. But no, I'm just kidding. Public money. If people kind of took that into account, right? One life to live. We don't know what's out there. Control what you can control, right? Keep the main thing. My grandfather, as wise as he is, and as complex as he is, my grandpa Brian from the hills of Tennessee. He tells me in that
breakfast.
Oh yeah. Well, we're a little zooted for that, but for what we usually were. But listen, man, if people realize if you just gotta keep the main thing, right? Keep plugging, keep pounding, right? If you're struggling out there and you want to make something of yourself, keep pounding. Don't give up. It's not worth giving up. It's not worth being that guy on the train who looks up into the heavens, almost saying, "Why God? Why me?" Right? It's Thanksgiving week. This motherfucker has a 3-day week, and he's saying that. Imagine what he looks like on a 5-day. Right?
Lord.
Motherfucker's probably banging his head. There's probably a dent in the side of the train. But listen, it's bad. And I think the good thing about 2017, man, is that there's avenues for you to create. There's avenues for you to be yourself. And there's avenues for you to monetize those passions. Right? Might not come in a year, 2 years, 3 years. But if you stay passionate, right, you do something that pays the bills, then, it's almost all you really need. And I understand why people, are aggressive in their careers. Like, that's great. I understand that. I just hate to see this almost like cycle of like just not boredom, but dissatisfaction with people's lives. You know what I mean? And I think that's really something that people could easily break out of. Like, now is the best time to do so. You know what I mean? And
now is the time.
Now is the time, dude. And I mentioned a little bit about Bajas and us at Florida State University go Noles 4-6. We're real legends out in those parts. We have so many stories from our college days. And I hope, Jake and Josh and all the boys, we've all gone through some crazy shit. I've been thinking about this. I've been having a hard time cementing what, like, my favorite memory was during college. You know what I mean? And I've been thinking a lot about that. Being a recent grad, you do a lot of, like, perspective, like, oh, did I make the most out of my 4 years? Like, blah, blah, blah. We did a lot of crazy shit, man. From driving across the country to Colorado to go skiing and do something else. It's
Good times in Austin,
a
Texas.
good time in Austin, Tech. We stopped in Austin. You know, we've done some crazy shit. Is there any like specific moment for you that sticks out from your college days?
Oh man, to put it on a moment is extremely
It's
tough.
tough, man. It's tough because you have all these moments. Some are good, some are bad, some you remember, some you don't. But
That,
I think it's more about like the friends that you make.
that's what I was gonna say next. Like, just honestly, my best part about college, it definitely was not going to class. It was, the people you meet. You literally meet so many people daily, especially in places like Miami, places like Tallahassee. You're meeting people every 5, 10 minutes if you're that type of person.
Constantly. Wait, you're meaning to tell me that you didn't enjoy going to Dr. Barry's Western Civilization classes?
Oh, there you go. Why are you calling me out? You know exactly what I was doing.
This guy, people. Let me give some background here. Dr. Barry, in my opinion, he was kicked out of Florida State like for teaching. He was a history teacher there.
He was
Something
intense.
he was more than intense. He was psychotic in a funny way. We had this professor named Dr. Barry at TCC. We had him from Western Civ 1 and 2, or at least I did. This is an old guy that would tuck his pants all the way up to his belly button, would wear his watch on his back wrist side, right, or whatever it is, and would just spout crazy shit, make like borderline, like sexual, misconduct comments to like a chick with like a nice ass or something like that walking by. One specifically that I'm referring to, which I know you tried to make a move on.
The cat.
Cat lady, that's her. This girl was so interesting, right? Captivating. She captivated the entire audience, ladies and gentlemen. She was like a goddamn theater performer. When she walked into the room, jaws would drop. But anyway, Thames,
Real crowd pleaser.
real crowd pleaser. Yes. You went out and talked to her, and apparently, nothing happened after that initial conversation.
You win some and you lose some. Did she tell you this?
No, you told me all this.
Oh, okay.
I was
All right.
extremely jealous of you.
You should be. Anybody can talk to anybody.
I know I probably would have been like, you like history, huh? Like, how do I start this conversation? Like, Julius Caesar massacring the Gauls, like crazy shit, huh? Like,
Good.
I didn't have anything to go off of, and the hookup culture at Florida State was so interesting, right? Or like the relationship culture. It wasn't tough to like get into a relationship or date people, but it's so touch and go. You know what I mean? In today's day and age, it's almost hard to like. You're on Tinder. Everything is like automated. Not a lot of like emotional connections, I guess. It's just a crazy time. Like for love, for politics, for business. It's a crazy time, Chris. It really is.
I mean, look who was on CNN last night.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because I
LeVar
was
Ball
not
and
going to bring it up
Donald
because I forgot. Okay.
2 reality stars on CNN going at it.
2 reality stars, right? Seriously. And my mother, bless her, she keeps telling me, "Oh, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for Christmas?" I don't really like send her stuff because I'm not like a greedy guy. I don't think I really need much. But I'll tell you what went on my Christmas list last night. LeVar Ball, big baller brand, Los Angeles Lakers sweatshirt. This motherfucker, LeVar Ball, people, went from AAU, right, to Lonzo Ball being a UCLA star, right, to, LaMelo and LiAngelo being stars in their own rights. This motherfucker is now involved in foreign policy for the United States. This motherfucker got his name next to Donald Trump's on
Crazy,
CNN
right?
prime time. And this motherfucker didn't take any of it seriously. I tuned in specifically to watch LeVar Ball. And I'm a huge fucking fan of LeVar Ball's. Huge fan. And I'll tell you why. He was raised in Compton, I think, right? Like, didn't have shit. Has those 3 boys who are all, talented basketball players. And now he has this empire that he's sitting on. And he's involved in foreign motherfucking policy. Let me repeat that. United States foreign policy. He's made it. He's made it. You can't talk shit about LeVar Ball because he has done something that nobody else has in his position, and that's go from like everybody knows that AU dad who's like a fucking prick, right? Who like yells from the sidelines or like talks shit about his son or like talks about other people like for his sons, to literally being involved in like foreign policy. And I just think that it's hard to hate on the guy.
Talking about a guy who told Nike and other big brands, no, this is LeVar Ball we're talking about. And you're right. He really leveled up. They are the first family of, basketball in terms of what they've done like that. I've heard a lot of different things about Lonzo in the NBA right now. But in terms of BBB and their entire brand,
it's booming.
Exactly. It's booming.
It's booming. It's booming. Somewhere DJ Khaled called...
Kicks.
Say again?
Shout out to Benjamin Kicks.
Oh, yeah. That kid's doing so well. That kid, I respect that hustle, dog.
An entrepreneur, right?
Have you like, crossed paths with him at all, him being based in Miami?
I have not crossed paths with Mr. Benjamin yet.
He's like 18 years old or 17 years old.
Exactly. He's young. I think he's just turned 18.
Yeah, for those who don't know him, this guy, Benjamin Kicks, started I think he initially started like some kid. His mom...
He was selling shoes before he met Khaled. He was selling shoes before he met Khaled.
Oh, yeah. So, like, his mom copped him a pair of shoes, right? And some kid at school was like, I'll buy those shoes off you. And that's how he started.
Yes, sir.
But guys like LeVar Ball...
He went on tour with a couple big-time artists. But what were you saying? Guys like LeVar Ball?
It's tough to hate. Like, I know so many people that hate on LeVar, right?
I could imagine.
And I could kind of get why people do. But how can you hate the guy when he's built this empire for simply just acting a fool? Like, let's be real straight. When you see him on First Take or when you saw him on CNN last night, what was he doing? He was smiling. He's like, "Oh yeah, Trump didn't say thank you," and he's like sitting there smiling, like, "Tell Mr. Trump, have a great Thanksgiving," because Big Baller is, and he just puts his thumbs up. Dude, CNN prime time. Trump, LeVar, like, he planned that. That's planned.
Right before, a couple days before Thanksgiving. Yeah,
planned.
Entertainment.
And you know why he said, now it took me a second to process it, but he said, tell him to have a great Thanksgiving. He said that because the whole thing was about LeVar not saying thanks to Trump.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's amazing. I went from, like, hating the guy to buying merch.
Thanksgiving.
Isn't that hysterical?
Not everybody gets that. Not everybody got that.
Oh my god, and then Chris Cuomo sitting there like, like, what do you mean by that? I don't know if you know what you're talking about. Like, fucking Chris Cuomo. Like, Chris Cuomo's a funny guy because his brother's the governor and his father was the governor of New York. Like, that motherfucker has tight-ass lineage.
So connections are heavy.
Connections are heavy, man. A lot of people get by in life just through connections. You were mentioning earlier that a lot of, like, people just are born with it, right? And they don't run with it, per se. Like, they'll go through the motions, and it's almost like that stereotypical, kid whose dad's, like, fucking oil rich or some shit like that, and just, like, sits on that money. I know a couple, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I'm not going to mention names. Well, it's kind of far removed, but I did some, like, party, like, busing work, or, like, waiting work at this, like, party this summer in the Hamptons. He had a rich-ass, this guy's made it in real estate. He's got properties all over the world. He has this massive, like, clear glass house right in the water in the Hamptons, right? Husband's good-looking, right? Wife is good-looking. They're older. Their kids were fat as fuck, like, ugly as shit. And literally, listen, I say that because, like, they weren't born like that. You have to be lazy. You don't eat right. You don't work out, right? Mm-hmm. You're a spoiled, rotten brat, right? You accept this blanket of security, and you just, like, say, fuck you, fuck everybody, I'm not gonna, do shit. And the best entrepreneurs, I feel like, come from not a dark place, but they don't start off good, right? You see guys like LeVar. We can talk about LeVar. He fucking grew up in Compton with, like, 9 brothers, or, like, some crazy shit, right? Like, who's, like, Jay-Z, from cooking crack in fucking Brooklyn, right? Yep. To fucking Beyonce. Let's put it frankly.
Talk about the level up.
Like fucking who's somebody else like
You got like
Warren
guys
Buffett.
like Jim Jones, Diddy, Warren Buffett.
Yeah, this motherfucker is like selling, like Coke bottles, like when he was like a really young kid around Omaha. People who come from less fortunate circumstances, I feel like, have more motivation and drive, right?
That's because a lot of them have to.
Except they have no choice.
Exactly.
They have no choice, and it's a funny world that we live in, bro.
I know guys on both spectrums. That's the crazy part. Like I know guys who don't have to work a day in their life, and I know guys who have to feed their mother. That's what I just mean about the whole entrepreneurship ride and the people you meet. You're talking about, you're used to this. You grew up in New York. You went to school in Florida. You traveled as a young man. But, you go to colleges in places like Miami, Cali. I'm originally from Connecticut, Stamford. Shout out to 203.
He's not only from there, he is the 203. CT, Connecticut. Chris Thames, Connecticut. He is Connecticut.
Spent a little time in England, so you start to meet.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
People.
Right.
You meet all these different type of people. Everybody's got a different net worth at the end of the day. And, it really just comes down to the individual and what they want out of life.
I know. And I don't want to generalize. I have to stay away from generalizations, I feel like, because that can get me in trouble. And the thing with this podcast, doing podcasts holds you accountable for your words. That's something that I feel like I need is something to hold me accountable. Because I have good points, but sometimes I can go a little crazy. As you know, I've done it before. So it's something to keep me in check. And when I say I don't want to generalize, because you have people that born rich that still have a work ethic, that still have drive. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to generalize, but like usually it's the people that have struggled the most who have, the most to gain. Right? And they come from that hustle, they come from that grind, and they ultimately want to be successful and get themselves out of the situation.
Absolutely.
And Thames, we've been talking here for an hour and 5 minutes. The first podcast.
And
right?
I hope I get to come back on.
Listen, Thames. All right. So for everybody here, I have notes for this podcast. Right, we covered about 45% to 50% of the things that I have listed, which means you owe me another podcast in which we'll have other things to talk about. Which this has been so much fun, dude.
Oh, Brian, we're going into 2018, dog. Like, trust me, we will meet again on this podcast, and it has been a lot of fun. And I really look forward to seeing all the different characters and faces you get on the show, because I know your network is deep.
Oh yeah, dude. We're having everybody from you to personal trainers to people involved in advertising, people who are on political staffs, people from all across the board. And the reason why I call it Prism, and I'll probably emphasize this further in introductions, what a Prism does, actually, Prism with an M, not an N. I want to emphasize that. Prism Podcast, not Prism, Prism. What a prism does is it takes light, natural light, goes into the prism, right? What it does is it provides the viewer with the proper optics to see what elements are in that light, giving you a color spectrum, right? And I believe that's true. I could be wrong. Someone's probably going to stomach for that. But ultimately what it does is it allows you to see life in its true color. That's what I want to do with this podcast. I want to have interesting folks on. I want to have meaningful conversations, organic conversations that ultimately can provide somebody with that one insight or that one piece of knowledge that changes their view on things, even slightly. And if I can do that for one person, that's all I want. Seriously, this is a passion project, right? I don't necessarily, I'm not worried about it having business legs, but it's gonna be fun to see where it goes, man. And I honestly couldn't have had a better guest. We have so many more things that we can talk about, but you're a busy guy. You're an entrepreneur after all, You you're working nonstop, and I respect that grind. But definitely want to have you on again. Don't hang up, by the way, after I exit this. Just want to, do some closing remarks. But I want to have you. I want to have you on again, man. I want to have you on real soon. There are other things that I want to talk about. There are things that you can talk about. And I think, we can have fun with this. And it's going to be fun to see it grow. But, to those who listen to this first podcast, I really appreciate you taking the time, out of your day to see what I'm all about. And if you don't like it, then it's fine. I'm not going to, that's fine. Like, that's life. We were talking about that earlier. You can't please everybody. Even though I'm a Libra, we're crowd pleasers according to a good friend of mine, which I actually don't disagree with. But Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Let's do this real soon. Is there where can the people follow you in Today's Loop on social media? You have 30 seconds of plugging, baby. This is like what's it called? First We Feast Hot Ones. Do your plug.
Follow us at Today's Loop. That's TODAYSLOOP at Today's Loop. That's on Instagram and Twitter. And for your news, check us out on todaysloop.com. I appreciate the support, and give us your comments. Let us know your thoughts. Interact with us. We love to engage with crowds and whatnot.
Yeah, Thames is going places. I know Thames super well. And if there's one thing that I know for certain about Chris Thames is that he's not a quitter, and he's driven as fuck, right? Those two things, working as one, hard to stop, hard to beat. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future, my man.
And going off of that, Kelly, I can say the same thing to you. I know you got that hustler mentality in you. You're a hard worker, and I look forward to seeing this show grow.
Oh, yeah. We'll see how much shit and how much haters I got, boy.
All right.
That's important. If people are hating, people are noticing. But
Exactly.
Don't remember, Thames. Don't hang up. But everybody, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Prism Podcast. It's been a real good one, and I'm looking forward to putting more content out there and ultimately making this a two-way street. So again, thank you everybody. Chris, you're a rock star, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody next episode.